Hello, 422. Hope everything is going well. It's Dr. Allen. Got a little bit of a unique week this week. Um, I'm actually going to make a few changes to the syllabus. And actually, when I pull up Sakai, I'm actually going to tell you there's a few things we aren't going to do this week. There's actually one thing, well, kind of two. So. Before I get going, though, a few things. One, the philosophy statements were fantastic. They are graded. It kind of struck me right before I started filming that I may not have sent you all the directions on how to access iRubric, which is replacing our old TK20 as far as like our accreditations materials or our assessments. I will send that out to you. If you're in 380, I actually did send it out to 380 a few weeks ago because I use it to grade the ed tech assignments. It's just a little rubric and we make them for there. But with all that being said, I will post something up on iRubric if you want to see the comments and all if you haven't already figured it out, which most of you probably already have. Two, I know I put this in an email last week. I'm going to be sending out, I'm going to look at everyone's schedules again, maybe a potential time we could get together. I might put 2 times out, and I don't care which one you would go to. I want to check in probably next week sometime to make sure everyone's comfortable with the unit plans. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff today, and a lot of it's going to be a little bit hodgepodgey, and it's going to be broken up. This is the one class where I feel like I almost just said, let's just meet this week. But I figured I'm going to go ahead and record it, and then I'm going to touch base with everyone after the fact, and then we can kind of go from the questions and such, which you all have been doing an awesome job, so I think that should be fine to do. So anyway, be on the lookout in a week or two, be on the lookout this week for a meeting the following week that we can all get together and kind of talk about any questions you have about the materials today, specifically the unit plans. It's just a big assignment. I don't think most of you are going to have problems with it because you're either in 370 or you've had 370. So you should be familiar with a lot of these concepts, but I just feel better checking in. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see if I can pull up what I need to here. And forgive me, I fight this. My Mac loses its cursor sometimes for some weird reason. All right. If you look here, week 5, it'll be up there probably on Monday for you to see. Today is Saturday morning. There's a lot of stuff on here. And there'll probably be a little more when I post it. This week, we're going to talk about planning your units. That's the major thing. That's number one thing you take away this week. That is due on November 22nd, your units, but I want to make sure that we're on the same page as far as what you're going to do. Evaluation in social studies is something I was going to do this week. I'm going to scratch that. I know it's on the syllabus. There's a discussion board that's coming up in a couple of weeks. I have something I want to do with assessment and evaluation. I'm going to save it for that week. So there won't be anything on evaluation other than what you have to do in your unit plans this week. So we'll come back to that. We're going to talk, the readings that are associated with this are Zeven 7 and 8. There are some quizzes that are associated with it, and it deals with unit planning and things like that. I'll also post the notes up here. They're not up yet. Blog 4, you can scratch out evaluation. That was that one thing I said we're going to skip. I'm actually going to do a blog on resources on some of the local museums and such that you might be able to do in lesson plannings and finding some things. So I'll change this title. Actually, why don't I just do this right now? Watch this. Let's be a big shot. Evaluation? No. Museums and their materials. Boom. And I'm going to go ahead and get the other thing off there too. Boom. And boom. So there you go. That's a more up-to-date list. Museums and their materials will be the blog. Flipgrid 4. By the way, Flipgrids have been fantastic. Awesome. One thing, though, about them, if you want, I'm not telling you, you have been doing an awesome job, so I'm not going to be too picky about this. But if you got a moment or two, respond to some of your classmates, even if it's just 10, 15 seconds, something that you said they like. Because of COVID, we're not seeing each other, all the time. It just gives you a little more face-to-face time. Just tell them, I really like that point. Oh, man, I wish I had thought of that. I do want to take a second to explain the Flipgrid real quick though. The prompt this week, in case it's a little wordy, but I think you'll get it. Basically, I just want to know one thing. Do you think when you hit the field as a full-time teacher, what is going to serve you better? Being incredibly super awesome, phenomenal with content knowledge? Or would you rather have a strong set of teaching skills? What I mean is delivery skills, classroom management skills, organizational skills, planning skills. What do you think is more important and why? I've had different answers on this, so I'm always kind of curious to see where everyone's thought process is. I'm not going to tell you mine right now. I may put it up at the end of the week after everyone's posted. I actually changed this philosophy over time when I started teaching. So I won't tell you which way. This is the second time I'm trying to record this video, and the first time I felt like I kind of gave myself up when I was talking about this. So I'm not going to say one way or the other, but what do you think is more important, content skills or teaching skills? There's no right or wrong answer. Just want to see what you think. All right, this week, the primary thing that we're going to look at is the unit plan materials. If you look on here though, there's about 4 different things on here. Some of this I'm just going to touch base on just to let you know that it's there, because we're going to hit it in a little more detail later. But I still just feel like we got to at least start recognizing that some of this stuff exists so we can kind of get into it. Some of it's just for your own benefit later. The very first thing I wanted to tell you, we are going to get into this a little bit later, because one of your assignments, the U.S. History mini lesson book, you have an assignment that's connected to EdTPA that we're going to do to get you more familiar with the concepts. There's nothing you have to do with it this week. Don't worry about that. But I'm going to get into EdTPA more with that lesson, just to kind of give you an idea of what you need to do. But I just wanted to tell you, I've actually set up or posted the EdTPA handbook for social studies and history if you are interested. If by chance you do not know what EdTPA is, that's okay. But you might want to get familiar with it very quickly, because most of you, I have a feeling, are going to be in 440 or with Dr. Johnson when you do your student teaching next semester, or in the very near future. She is the EdTPA guru. I will not even pretend to be in her level as far as EdTPA knowledge. But if you don't know, EdTPA is basically our capstone for your educational program career. You have to pass EdTPA with a score of 35 in social studies before you can go. And what EdTPA does is it has multiple task levels. There's task 1, task 2, task 3, planning, instruction, and assessment. And you're going to submit lesson plans. You're going to film yourself teaching. You're going to submit all this stuff to an organization, EdTPA. Sorry, I'm always sneezing. You're going to submit this to EdTPA, and they're going to score you. You will rock it. It seems like Dr. Johnson prepares everyone like all world. And also, it seems like from just my experience talking to students, they're so well prepared, they're over prepared. But it's still a stressor. I mean, I don't know how else to tell you. It is, because you have to pass it for the certification and such. Check out that handbook. We're going to look at these tasks, like I say, a little more when we do the U.S. history type activity, which is coming up in a couple weeks. But I just want you to start to think about it and become familiar with it. A few things you may, if you're just going to skim the guide, I'm not telling you to read it cover to cover, but if you were going to skim it today, I would maybe read a little bit about the central focus. The central focus is when you're making a unit plan that you need to, or a lesson plan, you need to make sure that it has a focus, makes sense. And you usually write that out in maybe a few sentences. You're going to actually do something like that with the rationale statement in your unit plans for me. Also, you might want to look at the language section, because one thing EdTPA likes to really look at is the language that you're using within your content area, specifically like content specific things like, it may be vocab like French Revolution or Reformation. It also will look at, and this is within your standards and your unit plans, it may also look at the skill words that you're doing, like analyzing, interpreting. Those are social studies skills. So you need to make sure that you're familiar with that and using those things. Also, you might want to just look at the task breakdown. But again, this is not required reading, but if you were going to skim through it, I would check those things out and start thinking, just have EdTPA in the back of your mind. I just wanted to go ahead and just throw it out there. again, we're going to do something with this activity a little bit down the road, so don't lose too much sleep over it yet. It's just there, and I wanted you to know it. The other thing, I know some of you have already taken this test, so I'm not overly worried too much about this, and everyone always seems to rock it. But if you need it, you do need to take the Praxis 2 content tests for social studies to be certified in West Virginia. It is test 5081. You have to get a score, I believe, in West Virginia of 148. Again, most of it is actually history-based. I think 40, well, plus political science. So 60% of it is history and political science, basically. Those two departments seem to rock it in terms of content knowledge for our students, so I'm not overly worried. But if you want to see what's all on the test, or maybe a breakdown of the test, I have put the study guide or study companion up. You are welcome to check this out and download it. If you look, there's the breakdown of the test. It's a 2-hour test, 130 questions. It's all multiple choice, so you don't have to worry too much about writing an essay or anything. Let me rephrase that. You don't have to worry about writing an essay. Not that much or a little. You don't have to worry about it at all. But there's the breakdown of the test. Usually economics is what most people worry about. But don't worry about it. If you rock this part, you'll probably score high enough that it doesn't even matter what you do on econ. Also, if you really want to get nosy and see what's on here, you can go to this. Let me see if I can pull that up. There it is. Come down. If you go, excuse all my downloads. It's been a very busy week. If you go here, I have posted a study plan, and sorry, it doesn't embed it like that study guide does with Word. This kind of gives you an idea of some topics that you might want to be familiar with, and you can check that out. I know just from conversations with a lot of you I've had this semester, about either live or online, or in Zoom, that you've already taken the test, which is awesome. You don't have to worry about it. But if you have not, it is right here, and it is ready to go and to check out if you want. The final thing that I had posted, and I hesitate to do this sometimes, but I went ahead and did it. And sometimes I worry about confusing people, but it's just a term that if I don't say it, I feel like it's going to pop up in your future, and you're going to be like, why didn't we learn this term? It's the C3 approach. It's a fancy term for an inquiry lesson plan, basically. But what it is, when you're doing your lesson plans, you might want to think about it. And actually, there's a document that I'm going to have you complete that's going to answer a question or two on this. It's not complicated. But the National Council for Social Studies has something that that they've developed called the C3 framework. And the C3 framework is basically, the 3 C's are college, career, and civic life readiness. Those are the 3 C's. Just a fancy word. And saying whatever you go into, this will prepare you in terms of social studies as to what you need to know if your teachers use this approach. If you look here, I have this, which is what we're going to focus on. I have this, which is a less pretty version of this. And National Council of Social Studies has put out a huge booklet explaining the C3 approach. It is much more detailed and as far as approaches go than what I'm going to talk about in this next 3 to 4 minutes. If you really want to dive deep, the book is here. You are welcome to check it out. It is on there to download. You can find it anywhere on the internet. I have a hard copy. Usually you can request hard copies. These are not standards, even though they appear to be standards. And they set goals up to what the students should actually know at the end of each grade. But if you look here, I'll come back to this later. Basically, let me explain what this is. The C3 approach is an inquiry arc of lesson planning. And I don't know how much you're all up on the gossip of what's going on in social studies. Probably not much, because who would want to be? But I can tell you this. When Common Core came out, there was a big movement towards the inquiry arc. That's when C3 came out. It was in 2009. Common Core, if you don't know, which you probably do, but it really stressed math and language arts. Science and social studies were actually not in that, but they were incorporated in math and language arts. Well, social studies naturally goes into language arts. I integrated a lot with our language arts teachers way before anything called the C3 framework. Well, we know an inquiry arc is actually what? Kind of looking at, studying documents, looking at images, things like that. What the National Council for the Social Studies has come up with is they came up with 4 dimensions. So when you do your planning, and if you're using documents, you should really incorporate this approach. I will say this, counties really are stressing this. EdTPA really likes if you use an inquiry approach or have an inquiry done in your unit plans or lesson plans. There are 4 dimensions. There's dimension 1, which means you're going to plan questions or develop questions for your unit or your lesson, specifically for each individual lesson. You all kind of did that on the Flipgrid the other week. You can do it. So what are the major questions you want your students to understand? Dimension 2 is what tools are you going to do? The tools are the standards, as you can see here, are those things. You might have noticed there's only 4 areas that are popping up. When they did the C3 approach, they did not look at this from a psychology or a sociology or an anthropology point of view. Those are the 4 major ones they look at because those are the 4 major ones that are in most state standards. So dimension 1, planning questions. Dimension 2, what are your standards with your inquiry? Dimension 3, what are your sources and what evidence are they going to pull from that or analyze from it? What do you want them to get out of that document that they're analyzing? Keep it simple. If they're looking at the Bill of Rights, I'm looking at it. What do you want me to get out of it? Like certain things, individual freedoms, interpretations. Is it fluid? Is it not? Is it a concrete document? Is it a living document? What do you want me to get out of it? That's your dimension 3. Dimension 4, how do you want me to communicate what I'm getting out of it? So, for example, are you going to have me give a speech? Are you going to have me write a paper? Are you going to have me do some sort of television commercial to show the class? How am I communicating my conclusions from the document? That's it. That's the inquiry arc. We're going to keep it like that. So when you're planning, and I will say this, when we get to the unit plans, I would love for you to have a document of some sort in that unit plan somewhere that's reflecting an inquiry arc. You don't have to list this stuff. That's actually on the questionnaire. But you need to keep in mind, what questions do I want from this document? What tools, what standards is it connected to? What's the actual document? And how are they going to communicate what they learned? That's the inquiry arc. That's the C3 method. That's the methodology. Now, if you want to go for a deep dive, that's fine. The book is here. I will be more than willing to do a crash course session on the whole book and everything like that. But for the purposes of this course, I don't want to do just like an overload. That's the inquiry arc. Dimension 1, Dimension 2, Dimension 3, Dimension 4. Just keep them in mind. You're doing a job interview and they asked you about an inquiry arc. I would just flat out say, well, I'm familiar with the C3 framework, which has the 4 dimensions, boom, 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 boom. And that's it. The rest of the book kind of gets into where the students should be related to each inquiry arc, which you can look at if you want. So that's the inquiry arc. So give me 1 second here. Hey, sorry if I'm jumping back in here and this has cut it a little weird. I had to step out real quick and go grab a drink of water. I was getting a little dry throat there. So, not that you care, I just did. My water bottle was empty as I was holding up as I was sharing. Anyway, jump back into the C3 method. That's it. If you can take those 3 things, you had Dimension 1, Dimension 2, Dimension 3, Dimension 4. That's the inquiry arc. I have a template for our unit plans that we're going to talk about. So this isn't actually in the unit plan itself. I just want you to be familiar with it. And there is a question on after you get done the unit, I do have some questions, and I do have one related to, do you think you addressed the inquiry arc? So I would definitely try to get at least one type of image, one sort of document or something like that in there that you can kind of look at this, so to speak. So with all that being said, let's get to the nuts and bolts. This is the big one as far as this, and this is why I'm going to set up time. The unit plan is not hard. I have a template. It's pretty straightforward. And if you're working on this and you're working ahead and you get a lesson done, you are welcome to send it to me and I can take a look. Couple of things also with this. I have a PowerPoint related to the unit plan, but I have learned over the years, it's usually easier just to pull the template up and just go through it. So that is what I'm going to do. I will post, it's a PowerPoint right here. It's right there, I can see it. I will post it right on this. I'll probably just put it there, PowerPoint associated. But what I'm going to do today, click this. There's two things there. There's the unit plan template and there's a checklist. I will also put up some unit plan samples from past years. I do want to give a little disclaimer. I kind of chickened out a little bit. I just was talking about the Inquiry Arc. There is a site that's called I think it's called the Inquiry Arc Lesson Maker. It's an online thing. I fooled with it a lot this summer and actually made some lesson plans. Actually, I don't know if you care. They're pretty cool. Where is that? Oh, did I not save it? That's all right. I'll show it to you on another date. I'm not going to get sidetracked here too much. I do that enough live, let alone on a video. It's pretty cool though. And I was 100% committed to having you all do it this year. I chickened out though, because with the COVID type stuff, I wanted to actually, when I was still planning on us meeting live, the department kind of was steering us away from that. I was going to take it to the computer lab and we were going to kind of just go over it and maybe even spend a little bit of class working on it. Not having that luxury, I'm a little scared to do that. So I'm going to stick to my old tried and true method. And that is I have a template and it is it's not exactly like 370, but it is pretty darn close to 370's template with, I think, Dr. Tuttle's class. It seems like most people are comfortable with that template, or a lot of people are taking 370 right now. And I feel like multiple types of lesson planning it confuses people. So with that being said, I have a template. Here's what you need to use. You open it and let's see if I can pull everything up. It would be really awesome. Let me hit this. It is plug and play. You can type over this. You do need to clear the stuff out that's already there though. All right. Here's what you need to do for your unit plans. I'm not going to go over a lot of terminology, or I'm going to try to avoid it as much as possible because I think you have a lot of this stuff or know a lot of this stuff. But first page, clear cut. What's the title of your unit? What grade is it for? What's your name? You can put a cute little image there if you want it or not. I don't care. All right. This is a Word document, by the way. All right. The next thing that you need to do is a rationale statement. I'm going to say this. I like a little bit of detail in my rationale statement, but I think this is very, very, very similar to your central focus for EdTPA. So if you look at that booklet, or when you get into Dr. Johnson's class, you have to have an overriding goal for your lesson. Now, let me back up. This is again where I wish we were alive a little bit. What I'm asking for with this unit plan. A unit is just quite simply a collection of 4 to 5 lessons. I think I on the website said 5. I will take 4. 4 to 5 lessons need to be in this unit. So you need to have 4 to 5 separate lessons around a central theme. So maybe it's the Renaissance. And you got 4 to 5 lessons in your unit connected to the Renaissance. Each lesson is its own individual lesson. The unit, what ties it together is going to be the first stuff on this first couple pages. It kind of gives me an idea as to what you're doing with the unit. So the rationale statement is the rationale statement for the unit. And you just answer those questions. Boom. You know, I'm not going to read each one. You can do it. But what's the spirit of the inquiry? What's the nature? You just give me an overriding view as to what you're hoping to accomplish with this. What are the cognitive, the discipline-related skills? Are they going to do a map analysis and things like that? I'll have, like I say, examples up if you want to check out some prior rationale statements. But you answer this. Now, do me a favor. I'm going to say this a million times. When you're using this template, this page is the rationale statement. Take all this stuff off. Leave the rationale statement in bold print there. That's fine, or you can redo it. But all this, highlight it and get it out of there. I already know what the questions are. I typed them, so I don't need to see them again. That's the first page of your unit plan. The next is our charts. I want, and you will maybe strangle me for this, but this is what ties it together for a unit plan. When you do your lessons, what you may want to do first before you do these pages, there should be state standards for each lesson. There has to be. Now, what's the point of the lesson? I want those all listed in this chart. And you can just cut and paste. I mean, I don't care how you do it. You can cut and paste them and put them in there, but they need to all be here. Also, you need to address the NCSS standards. That's your themes. You all did a flip grid on them. How is each one on there? I'm going to be honest with you. You should be able to address all 10 in some capacity in a unit and in some way, or make some connection. It may be small, but you just need to explain how you did it in your lesson. I would like to see that. Also, each lesson has to have objectives. There are basically 3 types of objectives I want to see in this unit / 4 to 5 lessons. I want to see knowledge objectives, I want to see skill objectives, and I want to see attitudinal objectives. You may say, that makes no sense to me. Well, we're going to make sense of it. A knowledge objective is basically your base level Bloom stuff. It's the knowledge that you're learning about the topic. Students will identify, or students will be able to identify and characterize the Mesopotamian civilization with specific focus on the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and such. You could even, and you did it perfectly on the flip grid, and this actually, you could actually expand this objective statement very easily. You could do, students will be able to identify and characterize the Mesopotamian civilization by completing a comparison chart of the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. That's probably a better objective, but it's a knowledge. It's the facts. It's the concepts. The skill objectives are things associated with the field. So students will use map skills, or students will analyze a map is probably a better way to say it, in order to locate major cities, population shifts, and major empires in the region of North Africa. The skill is the analyzing or interpretation of the map. By the way, you need to make sure when you write these objectives that there is some sort of verb that is showing the action as to what the students are doing. So you need knowledge objectives, skill objectives. The last one is a quirky one, but it's very, very important in social studies. It's an attitudinal objective. Attitudinal objectives state maybe some sort of empathy or emotional change or motivation that you want to see in your students. This is a base level one that I typed up, but students will be able to demonstrate awareness of the differences in global religions, and I should actually expand on that. Students will be able to demonstrate awareness of the differences in global religions by listening to speakers from the 3 major monotheistic religions. That's something you want to see, awareness. That's an attitudinal change. But I want all of your objectives that fit under here listed here. Again, those are from your lesson plans. So this is the cover sheet, basically connecting everything with the unit. After you do these pages, this is just filler. After you've done your lessons, you're going to get into your lesson plans. Now, this is just one lesson I'm going to go through, but just to kind of make the connections. 1, you got to put your state standards. I gave you those links. That's actually on week 1 or week 2. If you need them again, I will post them or just contact me, but they are up. It's your West Virginia State Social Studies Standards. Before you ask if you're planning on teaching in Maryland or Virginia or Pennsylvania, yes, you can use those standards. Put the standards of the state that you think you're going to teach in. You need to put your objectives. Those are your students will be able to. Again, take the ones that I have in here out. You can type over them. You can highlight them and phase them in, but get them in there. You need to have a couple objectives. I say 2 to 3 for each lesson. And by the way, yes, those are the things that are going to go up here. What's your anticipatory set? Are you going to do a bell ringer? What are you going to do? What's the major question? How are you going to do it? How are you going to get the students' organization? I mean, how are you going to get the students organized and geared towards the topic that you want to do? Bell ringers are the most common. If you're in 380, maybe you're going to do some sort of diagnostic thing with Nearpod where you're going to have them do a quick quiz. And you can just kind of see a quiz. And when I mean quiz, just an assessment type quiz to get a diagnostic. If they already know a little bit about Buddhism, do they know what the Four Noble Truths are? Do they know what the Eightfold Path is? Things like that. Maybe, can you think of any questions where there's a shared experience with the students that you can ask? Can you think of places you have visited? I have samples there. As you can tell, I must have kind of typed this up many years ago. It was related to Buddhism. I used to teach that in 7th grade a lot. And, you know, what are some shared experiences? Then your procedures. What are your procedures as you're going here? Now, you know, what's your bell ringer? How are you going to expand on that lesson? That's something I need to expand on in here. What are your instructional approaches going to be? Are you going to lecture? Are you going to do stations? Are you going to have students work on an assignment? Are they going to do group work? You know, what objectives are they connecting to? What materials do you need? How long is it going to be? I am not worried too much about the time. I probably should take that column off of there, but I think you do need to recognize that, you know, you don't have forever to do things. I usually tell people to think about it as a 45-minute class, but if you want to do something that's an hour, if you think you're going to have a block schedule or something, that's fine. I'm not, just be consistent with whatever your times are as far as the class goes. But you do need to expand, like how are you going to teach this? What's, you know, are you lecturing and such? And again, I'll put examples up if you need some ideas, but maybe you're going to have students analyze a document. You're going to introduce Magna Carta might be a nice one. You're doing Magna Carta. You do a little bit of a lecture or a little bit of a PowerPoint, or you do a Nearpod or something on King John, or you ask them about Robin Hood or something like that. And you kind of go a little bit into that. Then you introduce Magna Carta, and you're going to talk about what you want students to look for. Maybe students need to go in there and identify all of the verbs, or maybe students need to go in there and identify all the changes or powers that the king is losing. Also, you want to have some sort of, and it is on here, actually, they're down here, so I'm getting ahead of myself. I get excited. How are you going to assess your students? How are you going to do that informal evaluation? Are you going to do a Q&A? Are you going to do maybe a journal? Are you going to do, again, a Nearpod if you're going to use technology, a Kahoot, you know, something informal, something formative? How are you going to formally evaluate it, i.e. what's maybe going to be your summative evaluation? I will tell you for EdTPA, I'm quoting from Dr. Johnson, you need to think about having a mini summative each day. Like, how do you really know that they know the materials? It might be your exit ticket. It might be something you have on some form of technology. I've had students do an exit tweet. They didn't have them on Twitter, but they literally had a piece of paper, and they had a tweet, like the overriding theme of the day or something like that. What is some sort of formative assessment? If you're doing a document analysis, do they have to turn in a worksheet of some type? Something along those lines. Some of these are repetitive questions. How have you connected objectives, instruction, and assessment? They're all mapped back to the state and NCSS standards. That's fine. Don't leave for example if that's what it is. Hopefully that's the answer most of the time. How does the nature of the assessment for information affect your selection of instructional method, i.e. why are you doing the instructional method, the heart of your lesson? Why are you doing what you are doing? You need to answer that question. What is the student's independent practice that they're going to be doing with this assignment? Do you have any accommodations? Again, just imagine if you have to do something. It could be something, if you're in a placement right now and you're doing accommodations, you can put that. Maybe you can say, you know, I will formulate anything related to any IEP requirements or things like that. It's just, sometimes you just got to imagine what it would be. So if you have an accommodation, think about ways that you could potentially do. Provide a handout of the PowerPoint, or I will provide a hard copy of my notes, something like that. Just ways you think you could help students that might have an accommodation of some sort. What's going to be your closing exercise? Make sure you put it on there. Reflection. What are the things that you want to know? Now, if you haven't, some students will go, well, I haven't taught the lesson, so how can I do a reflection? What are the things you want to know about this lesson? Like, is the PowerPoint any good? Was this a good document to analyze? Things like that, just base things you would like to know about it. You can just put them as questions, that's fine. What are reflections? What do you want to know about your lesson? Couple things. You should have 5 lessons within a unit plan. I did tell you could do 4. 4 is fine. So you need to have, we'll even put it on here right now. 4 to 5, why don't I even make that capitalized? 4 to 5 lessons within this unit plan. Yes, they need to be 4 to 5. And in an ideal world or in the reality, I know sometimes 4 lessons may actually end up being 6 days. We're dealing with a utopia, so just go with it. Bibliography. I do want a bibliography. I want a bibliography of the resources that you used, and I want a bibliography of the resources that the students used. Just to summarize, what do you need to have in this unit plan? You need to have CSOs. You need to have NCSS standards. You need to have a rationale. You need to have objectives. You need to have 4 to 5 daily lesson plans, which reflect organization, time, assessment, materials, and instructional method. And you need to align it. That's what you need. You can use this template. Again, I'm going to send out an email with some times if you have questions about this, because I know doing this over Zoom and in a recorded lesson may not be, it's not always ideal. So just to make sure we're on the same page with this, we'll make sure. Could be short, it could be a short meeting, could be a long meeting. I'm fine either way. It's what I'm paid to do. So, excuse me. That is the lesson unit plan. I have this template up. Now, one thing I have done sorry, I didn't save that version. I'll post a new one up. One thing I have done, I lost my cursor, there it went. I'm going to get rid of this, rid of this, rid of this. I mentioned this. There is a checklist, and forgive me, I know the font's a little funky on this. I typed it up yesterday, and I caught this morning that some of the font got a little big, but the point's still there. You have to also answer these questions. If you have me for 380, you have to do something similar for that unit plan also. So I'll fix this, but lesson 1, and they're the same questions for each lesson. What's the central focus of this unit? I want you to start thinking about that EdTPA type thing, but you don't have to write a whole paragraph. You don't have to cut your whole rationale statement. Just in like a sentence, what's the focus? Like, the focus of this lesson is to understand how humanism influenced the Renaissance. Boom, that's the central focus. Boom. What is your major lesson question? So lesson 1, what is the big question you want your students to be able to answer after this lesson? That's it. You just type it there, 1 sentence. Standards and learning objectives, cut and paste them in. That's fine. That's fine. You don't even have to have the whole wording. The numbers are fine. A summary of the procedures. What are the ways that you're going to instruct this? You can bullet them. I don't care. This doesn't have to be the whole lesson plan again. Boom, 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 boom. They can be just quick little PowerPoint bullets. If you're using any technology, can you put it there? I'm not saying you have to use technology in every unit, or I'm sorry, every lesson. But if you are, just list it. Again, it doesn't have to be a complete sentence. Just list it. What social studies skills do you think are in there? Analyzing maps, looking at charts, debating, anything that you think is a social studies skill. I'm open to interpretation and suggestion on that. Again, you can list it. What assessments are you doing in this lesson? I want to know that. You can, again, list them. That's fine. Does this unit, or I should say, I'll fix that question, which definitely, does this lesson incorporate the C3 method? Now, what am I saying? How about this? Or any of the C3 dimensions. Of course, I'm going to misspell dimension, so I'm not going to embarrass myself. Dimensions. I'll fix that. Does it incorporate that? So if it has like dimension 1, dimension 2, dimension 3, dimension 4, just put it dimension 3, dimension 4, dimension 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, if you need to go back, that chart is up, and you can do that. Are there any documents used within this lesson? Yes, there may be repeats. You may have to do something for 2 days. That's fine, as long as it's listed as a different lesson. By the way, I'm glad I said that. Yes, I do want the lessons to be different for every day too. Like if you're just, I don't want you to say, well, we're going to read something and we're going to read it again this day. And no, I want a little bit of variety in the lessons. But if there's any document analysis at all done in this, and that can be a video, can be an inquiry method. So maybe if you're doing something from the living room candidate, it can be a map, it can be a chart, it can be a poster, it can be a document, it can be a constitution, it can be a work of art, it can be any of that stuff. But I want that in there. And when I say documents, videos, let's do this, videos, I'm updating this as we go. I was thinking about this and how we could incorporate videos, maps, charts, etc. Boom. Think about it if you had AP, some of the DBQ stuff that you're going to do. We're going to do a DBQ stuff next week, but think about it that way. These questions will all be the same, and I will update these and repost it. But this has to be done after your unit. And again, don't make your life difficult. You can bullet stuff. I just want you to go through this and just kind of think about it after you've done it. This assignment is not due until November 22nd. November 22nd. So you have 2 months to work on it. And if you're in the field, you are welcome to work on this and use some of your field type stuff. That, my friends, I believe is everything related to that. Let me stop sharing. I think that's everything with the unit plans this week. Again, I will send out an email related to signing up for any questions related to any of this. I know it's a lot, and not being live, it drives me bonkers a little bit. So I feel like we need to set up a Zoom time. And if the Zoom time goes well and you all want to continue like checking in, that's fine. I will say this, you've been rocking it. Hopefully the videos are helping and the directions have been good, because I can't complain. You all have done the work and the flip grids and everything like spot on. So with all that being said, it's Saturday. Actually, it's now Saturday afternoon. So hopefully you've enjoyed the weekend. Nice weather, nice fall weather. Catch you later. I'll see you. I'll send that list out, the appointment time, probably on Monday or Tuesday.